Is the chain okay? Does it not bother?
Oh,
Okay.
no. We have worked with many a thing. Make the
Transfer,
microphone.
transfer,
Exactly.
You sure you don't want to boom it?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Irregardless. I'm your host, Gabriela, and today we're joined by the incredibly talented actor and producer, Julio Macias. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
When you read a script, is there anything that makes you go, I need to audition for this?
Money.
Yeah,
No.
number one.
I got into acting because my overall love of the creation of film. So I always look at something as the whole, and then what part can I contribute in, right? So I do get excited about like a role, but it's more of in the first 5 pages. If they send me the script, if they happen to send me the script, if in the first 5 pages I want to watch this, I want to be part of this, or I want to see this happen. If that doesn't happen, but the character description is really cool, then it's like all right, there's a second step of, can I talk to the writer or producer, like, what are you trying to do with this? Can we have fun with the character? I don't know if annoyingly would be the right word, but I tend to really mold the characters that I get. I really like to play opposites. So if I do something, like the next thing I do, it doesn't always show like work out this way. Sometimes you just gotta take the job. But if I can, I want to find something different or new or this or that. Or I'll get a call. It's like, hey, I love what you did here. Can you do it again? I was like, I don't want to, but
Show the range.
like but it's not even so much about like showing the range.
Yeah.
It's fun for me to switch it up in that sense. But Jessica tells me then, and it has happened, Julio, then how will people know what to cast you in? And that has been an actual problem where they're like,
Really?
I mean, you can do all of these things, but we don't know what you are. But right now, when it's very much IP driven, and it's IP is not just comic books or whatnot, it's the IP that you create for yourself. So who is Julio Macias? It's like, well, I don't want you to see me on screen. That's boring. But then they're like, but then I don't know what to cast you as.
I'm curious, when you read the breakdown then for your character as Oscar as Spooky,
Mhm.
what was it there that you were like, this is different, I guess, in the way that they're trying to portray this character?
It was one line, don't remember it like for verbatim, but it was anything for his younger brother, which was just different from a lot of other, I hate to just put it like that, but like a cholo role, right? Because that's such an interesting and vibrant and bigger community than what you think. But when you just say cholo, it just immediately, you narrow it out into this one little path, which it really isn't. But that genre of characters, if you will, sometimes they're no description, just, tough guy or recently released or scary, la la la. And this one had a description of what he does, and then at the end it was something along the lines of like anything for his brother. And that intrigued me. And then that kind of, at least for the audition process, was I can play love. I can play violent love. I can play love. I remember when I did the audition, when I attacked the camera or whatever, it wasn't a sense of showing violence. It was a sense of protection. And I remember just feeling that internally, like, whoa, I can play this, because I'm not Julio personally an aggressive person. But in this one where you're forced in this corner, and now that I have kids, I'm like, yeah, if push comes to shove, I'll do what needs to be done.
But when you approach a character that is an actual real person, someone like Pete that you played in the Selena series, do you approach that completely differently?
Yeah, there was hours and hours and hours and hours of reference videos, of interviews, of stage performances, of just random walkabouts and things like that. So there was a lot of material to pull from, and there was there was two things that stood out to me. I was like, okay, I like to sing, but I'm not a singer. I like to dance, but I'm not a dancer.
But the love is there.
But the love for like music starts playing, and I'm there. I straight up look like Goofy. My son tells me that all the time. And Pete was shorter than me, like significantly, and watching him move, I was like, I'm doing the steps on rhythm. He looks so sharp and crisp, and like my legs are looking like they're doing these things, and the producer on set, so she would see me and she's just like love all of your work, but like just can you just please rehearse more? And I was like,
She's like, Julio, you're ruining this.
girl, I'm the only one at rehearsal. Like, what is not actually, but like, I'm there every day, trying to get the steps in.
Promise.
Like, I promise. I at one point I had to go into because we were shooting in Rosario. I had to go into San Diego because I like a toenail had like because of the shoes like had like started to cut in, and over Christmas break I nursed a toe. I'm like, I'm getting it. Like
I have an injury.
yeah, I'm going. And it wasn't until after when I spoke to Pete, I was like, so did you always want to be a dancer? How does like, what are you talking about? Oh no, we just like got up there and we just, made it up on the spot. And I was like, I hate you so
You're like, I
much, dog.
literally have like a toe infection now. Thank you
Yeah,
so
like
much.
literally, homie, like you're
You just have natural talent.
you're just that good. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that again, but there is an interesting character creation when you're starting to mimic somebody. That's a cool, interesting task that I would love to do again.
I'm sure you'll have an ample opportunity to do so.
Hopefully.
You grew up very Hollywood adjacent
Mhm.
with your dad in the voice dubbing business.
Yeah.
Was there anything, a preconceived notion that you had about the industry that was completely shattered the minute that you entered it?
Yeah. Opportunity. The opportunities are limited in Mexico City. Obviously, the industry there is everybody generally. I mean, it wasn't until I got older I was like, a lot of these people look a lot more like Spaniards than they do Mexicans. But that wasn't something that I thought as a kid. As a kid, I was like, they're all speaking Spanish. They're all
Right.
equal. They're all the same or whatever. Going into my dad's like studios, you would see all of these different actors have give different or give another life to American products and whatnot. And so I just saw a microcosm of production. So I never thought there was a limit of opportunities. And when I came here, and I had this notion that I needed to study as much as I possibly could before I started auditioning. That's something that I might have done different. I should have probably started auditioning as I was preparing myself, because the auditioning process, I know there's audition classes.
Are there?
Yeah, but there's no preparing you for the amount of no's. And that's just a callus that you have to, and getting fake no's in a class is different than like getting real world no's, and it's just constantly no, 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 no. And that's not particular to the Latino community. That's across the board. It's a no business, right? Until you get that one yes, or that those two yeses or whatever it is. But then once I got on my block, I really thought that I was like, okay, I've never wanted to be Brad Pitt or like the number one on the call sheet. I very much like character work, and again, since I love production, I'm not stuck with this idea that acting is the only thing that I'm going to do in this industry, right? But I did think that I was going to be like consistently working, because I would see, oh, I can, because of how I like to play, I can play that guy's best friend. I can play that villain. I can play that romantic interest. Ooh, I would love to be the taxi driver in that one bit, and people might recognize me like, it's funny, Julio Macias played that taxi driver. And when that didn't start happening, like almost immediately off the bat, but then I saw my counterparts and my friends, and they're not competition, but the people that would be getting the same roles, having that same experience, and then watching the, I guess, Anglo version of that, of people who are in around our age that had a similar opportunity, and then they just kind of keep popping up in all of these shows. You're happy for them. You're not like, what. And then that's when oh, this is what they mean by like lack of opportunity, right? Or that they can't see you in anything else other than what they see you as. But I also think that there's a certain competitiveness that is just the name of the game.
Yeah.
Do I think it's skewed against us? Sure. But I also think that this is just the nature of the game.
I mean, you called it, it's a no industry. I was shocked when I first moved here, especially from New York. I remember my older sister said to me, be careful because everyone's going to try and sell you a dream. They're gonna try and sell you a dream there. Everyone's so nice. Everyone's a yes man. They're like, oh my God, that's the best idea I've ever heard. And then nothing happens.
And then nothing.
Nothing happens. You have 50 conversations. Maybe one of those conversations, something remotely useful comes out of it, which in my book, I think is worth it. You collect your nose and you keep going and whatever, but it can be really frustrating and exhausting and also like fill your head up if you're not
Yeah.
in reality.
It gets to you because you can build up that callus and you're like, oh, no's don't bother me. I'm so blessed that I have like 10 to 15 auditions a month. Like
Wow.
that's a very high batting average. But booking is still, an enigma. And sometimes I'll be having like a bad day and I'm like, oh man, I sent 3 really great tapes. And then it's like, oh, no for this reason, no for that reason, no for that reason. And then I'm like, I'm 35, I'm driving home and I'm like, I feel off. I feel weird. And it's like, yeah, you got these 3 no rejections. Like, but no, but I got past that. I was like, you don't really ever really get past that, especially if you're having a bad day. There is a look, you can call them champagne problems, right? Because comparatively to other industries, but if we're talking about what we do on a daily basis and our work as actors, there is huge emotional and psychological abuse that happens, and I'm not meaning that from anybody else other than like even ourselves, right? Where in acting classes or at conservatories, they teach you how to break down. They teach you how to get to the deepest, darkest corners of your heart and your psyche to be able to bring these characters to life. I have never known a class or anybody that teaches you how to build yourself back up. Like, and I don't even know what that class would look like because everyone builds themselves back up differently. And I think that's why you see so much substance abuse and so much depression and all these things because yeah, we live in this no environment, and on top of that, your job is to break yourself apart and then like go have a nice day, right? Enjoy your thing. Like I feel for people who start this out when they're kids. I've had incredible opportunities to work with very talented younger actors, and I've often taken it upon myself to like remind the producers or the directors that these are children, and if it's hard for an adult to snap out of a dark space after a day, that will be a formative moment in that child's life. So like the ideas of like, I want to get a real reaction, so like scare them. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna trust that they know what they can act. It's like, oh, but I really want to get that real reaction. Like, if they were adult, maybe I'd consider it, but as a child, like, no way.
That's kind of a fucking wild ask.
Yeah, yeah. And then the parents are like, oh yeah,
Like, don't worry about it.
They're super cool with everything. I'm like, okay.
I read that you felt like when you were playing Spooky, you brought work home a lot, and a lot of it spilled into your personal life.
Yeah.
And I think you called it healthy habits that you needed to introduce in order to keep doing this long term. Have you done that?
Yes. This was my first opportunity, and I wanted to do it justice, so I wanted to Daniel Day-Lewis it, and I didn't know what that meant because I did all of the intellectual prep. I know this community adjacently. I grew up in Sun Valley. Even though my family were immigrants and my mom, because of the circumstances of how we came to this country, was very protective, so I wasn't allowed to go out and like hang out with my neighbors and stuff like that. I would always see these communities in parks and be very curious. And then there's, then deconstructing the idea that they're Mexican American and I'm Mexican, but somehow we're different, and my parents didn't want me to socialize with that crowd, even though I went to school with that crowd and I felt more adjacent or connected to that. So I did all of the intellectual background of like, how did these communities become what they are, and how are they represented, and what can I do to kind of get myself back there. But the toughness or the certain look, or these are things that I had to experience and learn on my own, and I felt if I let go of them, I wasn't going to be able to grab them again. So the first season I held on to that anger. Simple things as like somebody like brushing me on the street, and you get brushed on the street all the time, and this turned into like, hey, watch it, which was a small aggressive thing that I started doing. Drinking was a big one. I don't know why I felt that I needed to kind of just have this swollen face, or and then I thought that's how I was going to do it. And then working out but not taking care of my body after the first season, I was like, I can't sustain this. And if I want to do not just spooky, but if I want to do any other character, I need to figure out another way to do this formula because like now if Daniel Day-Lewis really does that for every single, I get why he retired. He's like,
I'm
guys,
out.
I'm
Yeah.
out. I'm done. Like I
Yeah.
can't, my body, my soul can't take it. So now I've definitely gotten better about compartmentalizing it. I think that I've done this long enough to like now there's like that muscle memory of like putting it in a file, closing that file, but knowing that that file's still there, accessible the next day.
Yeah. I think it's amazing how often and open you are. You talk about being in therapy and using alcohol, and even now this experience that I'm hearing now of how you were when you were preparing for Spooky. And I feel like we're seeing a really big uptick in a lot of anger from very young men
Yeah.
right now. And I'm curious, especially after becoming a dad and you have a son, what you would say or suggest, because you said something, and I don't even want to attempt to quote it without looking at it, but you said, I realized I did need to talk, but I didn't need to talk to everybody.
When I first got into therapy, it was like searching for a solution, like, and it was a begrudging, like, all right, like, how do we fix this?
Aren't you shocked when they tell you they're not going to tell you how to fix it?
Yeah,
Isn't it annoying?
where it's like the one that made me angry, but it made sense was like the load doesn't get lighter, you just get better at carrying it, right? And you're just like, oh
You're
dang,
like, thanks so much.
that's not what I wanted to hear at all. But you're like, oh, I'm stronger. I'm carrying the same emotional weight, but I have better tools to carry it and hold it. There are all of these macho machista traits, right? That I grew up with that I didn't see anything wrong with, and then I found them incredibly toxic. And now I'm in this space of rediscovering what it is to be a man for myself and for my son, even though knowing that the avenues of existence have now broadened, right? I cannot teach for every existence, and whatever my son ends up coming to me with, I will be open and loving and understanding and try to have that discussion with him or however that might work out. But until then, he is my son, and what does it mean for me to be a father, to teach him to be a man? What does love look like for a man? What does strength look like for a man? Because I definitely don't want him to like, oh, my dad doesn't know how to be a man, so I'm gonna go try to find that role model somewhere else, and then that becomes something that I just, vehemently disagree with.
From my perspective, like a huge part of that, of what it means to be a man, is baking in that massive vulnerability
Mhm.
as part of the strength. Because I think, again, like, I'm not a psychologist, but when I see this like inherent, like intense hatred and anger coming from these kids or young adults, to me, it signals, I mean, so many things, but it's just this like serious repression of emotions.
This might be a generalization, but it's definitely true with, I would say, 80 to 90% of the men in my life, right? We're not, we bro out. Like we're like, yeah, let's all get together, and then we just sit there in silence, and I don't want to change that. Like the last thing that I want to do is hang out with my friends and like, so how's your day
Talk
going?
about
Like,
your feelings
bro,
the whole time.
listen, I don't want to talk about my day. But did you watch that movie? And then we talk about our day by talking about the movie. I think it's difficult, and I don't know necessarily how to navigate it. All I'm trying to do with my son is reinforce kindness, reinforce love, reinforce support, right? But also encourage. Tom Cruise says this, but like, if you're not gonna be safe, be smart, right? So if you're gonna climb that tree, what's the best way to climb that tree? If you're gonna jump in the pool and you don't know how to swim, like what's the best way for you to navigate the pool?
I mean, how did you find that one person that you ended up speaking to and opening up to about?
It took 3 tries. I went to 3 different therapists over the years, and then the first 2 were just an echo chamber of what I told. Like I controlled the narrative, and so they're like, Julio, you're fine. The world is wrong. You're great,
Oh,
right?
good for you for recognizing that that
Um,
is great.
Yeah, so, but like either both of those stints I had for quite a while. Like, it was just like, yeah, I'm doing fantastic. The world's wrong. I'm not wrong. But then all of my issues were still there. And so I switched to another one and then, or I stopped therapy and then I was like, okay, I'm going to give it another shot. And I tried it again. And it was the same situation where I controlled the narrative. And then the third time, it was this sense of like, this woman is giving me the energy of whatever you tell me, I'm going to hold for you and with you. Right. Which I maybe didn't feel before, or maybe I was just manipulating the situation. But it wasn't until I felt that I said, okay, I will trust the process, and I'm also going to trust you to keep this for me. And that's what it's been. And it's been a couple of years, and it's, off and on. And I usually go off when I find that I'm not actually speaking on anything other than I'm I'm searching for things to be upset about, and I'm bringing. It's almost like, oh, I didn't do my homework. What am I upset about this week?
Yes, that has
Yeah,
happened to me.
yeah,
And that's honestly when I realized I had to take a beat,
yeah.
was because I felt like I was drudging shit up just to judge shit up. Has there ever been anything that you've walked away from that turned out to be the best decision you've ever made?
There was a project that was offered to me where I would have been the lead, and it would have been my first lead, and it was this really cool mythology lace action thing that would have been for a very big streamer, and I needed to go because it was during COVID for like 9 months, and it was right when my son was born, and against almost everybody, I said I can't take that, and they're like, but no, hold on, the writer had you in mind, like I'm not missing my son's first 9 months. I'm not doing it. I don't know if I'm still recovering from that, like career wise. But I'm so happy that I was there for my son's like almost his entire first year. I only took jobs here in Los Angeles, but I think that making that decision at that time kind of set a precedent of like, if I'm not doing it for my family, then who am I doing it for? And if I'm not spending time with the people that I'm doing it for, then why do it? Right? But that's just me, and that's definitely not advice for other people to take. That's just what I needed to do. Or
I also really believe that the things that you say no to that are not right for you, even if it's this like beautiful, dangly, shiny
Mhm.
carrot in front of your face, you're gonna get back tenfold.
Yeah,
I think listen, you're a big comic book guy. What's the
yeah.
dream comic book
Oh man.
character
Okay.
role?
There is a character named Masacre. He is Deadpool's Mexican counterpart.
Okay.
It's interesting because the character's still so young that it's vague. Like there's not a whole backstory. He's like a character that kind of pops in here and there, and I'm like, this is so cool. But essentially, there's a tragedy in his family, and he could have gone the Punisher route where he was going to now take it out on all the cartels or all these other things. But then, before a very dark moment, he watches a commercial, and it's Deadpool hiring for his Deadpool corpse, right? And so he just becomes enamored with Deadpool and tries to copy him in Mexico. But he doesn't have super regenerative superpowers, and he's not particularly witty. So he like just is kind of insane and goes off and does all the things that like the Punisher and Deadpool do, but he doesn't have any superpowers. He just like a super fanboy or something.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, yeah.
Someone
So
write it.
yeah, someone,
Make
let's
it
go,
happen.
let's go.
When you guys were on my block, this is like we're Latinos, we're superstitious people. There were so many fun little superstitions baked into the on my block
Hmm.
storyline. Are you a superstitious person?
I will say no, but I do have a velita that I turn on when I'm like, this is the role that I need. But I'm just like, it's more of like a just in case,
But that is
you
a
know? Yeah,
what is that though? There's
yeah,
a
I
name
know.
for it.
And it's because I'm also like I'm not. I haven't been religious in I grew. It's weird. It's like I grew up Catholic, and it was just kind of like a given. And then, once you read the Bible a couple times, you're just like, at least for me, it wasn't like this security. It was mm, and
Let's circle back to that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so now but I still have my rosaries on the side of my bed.
Yeah.
And when I travel somewhere, I grab my mom's rosaries and I bring them with me to whatever hotel I'm staying at, and like I like put them up, right? And then when I pray or whatever whenever I asked for the universe, my source code, the way that I connect with it is Padre nuestro que estás en los cielos, santificado sea tu nombre. Even though I'm not actually praying to that.
But that's still your thing. That's your
It's
source
yeah.
code. That's cool. But see, this is, I love that you say this because this is, I think, for me, like the way that I connect with religion is it's about your own connection with God, source, universe, whatever it is that you call it. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of us that were raised Catholic have this realization where we're like, hey, maybe
Mhm.
not. There's no wiggle room. And so being able to pull from it and create your own relationship, that's the beauty of it, I think.
It's crazy because then they're like, well, you don't need religion, just like close your eyes and connect. And the time that I've tried to meditate and just connect, it's vague and it's kind of like, but I say the magic words and suddenly I'm warm and I'm connected and I feel like I'm speaking to somebody or something, and it's right there, right? So that's why I say that's my password to get into the thing, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And we talked a little bit about it today, but I'm curious when it comes to your legacy and what you want to leave behind, how you want to be remembered, the man that you want to be.
Yeah.
What does that legacy mean to you?
I don't need it to be what my family will know, because what my family will know, they'll know, right? That's for them and that's for us to hold. But a wider legacy, I would like to be remembered as collaborative, as kind, as patient, as passionate, as creator of community. And I don't necessarily mean that in the Latino community, but whatever I build, that it feels uh, like home.
I think you're already doing that. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much.